Good morning. It's warm, and I'm loving that. I've been telling a few people I'm from Queensland, and I got off the plane on Thursday morning, and I had a pair of board shorts and a t-shirt and thongs on, and I looked like a real fool in the middle of Melbourne airport. And you could tell on the plane it's coming from Brisbane who's coming from Brisbane to visit Melbourne and who's coming from Brisbane to come home to Melbourne. Because the people who live in Melbourne, they're ready, and they get off the plane and they walk out. They're already dressed warm, and they don't look shocked by that temperature at all. And then there's the rookies like me who get off, and we're just like getting changed in the terminal, putting jumpers on, putting jeans on, and people are going, yeah, that guy's a visitor. So I'm loving how warm it is today. It's come out really good. And I hope you guys are stoked to be here. There's some of you who probably just cruised in today for the weekend, and others of you who've been on the journey over the last few days. And we're talking about imitating, the imitation generation, what we reflect in our lives. And as Christians here gathered today, talking about focusing in on Jesus. I want to confess to you guys this morning that in my life, I have been like the biggest imitator of many different things that had nothing to do with Jesus. I stand here at the front, up here on this stage, but I want to be completely transparent with you and tell you and be honest with you that I've tried to imitate so much junk in my life. And on Thursday night we talked about the things we love and how we get to know them well, and then we become known by that. And man, I have loved and I have known well some stuff that really was leading me to a dead end. Last night we talked about relationship and how our world messes that up. How it messes up that concept of love. It's like it's a two-way street, and the world tells you, no, it's a one-way street. You just receive love. Go and get it. It's for you to enjoy. And leaves out that part where it's like, this is something to be reciprocated. The Father sent His Son so that we might show others that same love. And today I want to share a little bit of my testimony with you guys. You've seen or heard snippets of it, but I want to kind of unpack that story a little bit so that you guys can kind of get an insight into how I actually got here. I shared with you last night that 10 years ago I was sitting in a high school tent at a big camp for the first time ever, falling asleep because I've been out mucking around with my mates all day. And a huge part of that journey I was on at that point in time was this imitating stuff that I thought was going to fill me up. I'm going to pray and we'll get into it. Bow your heads with me. Lord, I want to thank you for the worship, for the people we have leading us this week. Just humble praise. And thanks for the words that have been lifted up already this morning. Thanks for the drama team and the message that they're putting across. And Lord, I pray that you would bless each aspect of what we do here in every tent on this campground, and that you would bless every person sitting here this morning, standing here this morning, who's gathered to hear your word, to hear your name and draw nearer to you. And I pray that is our sole purpose. Amen. When I was young, my brother and I had these older cousins, and some of you might be able to relate to this. We just idolized these guys. We thought everything they did was like gold, hey. I remember going over to their house, and every time I went there, I would just like pick up a new hobby or a new interest that I saw them doing, because they were just cool. They were the coolest guys out. And I wanted to do and be everything that they did. And one of the things that our cousins were into was skateboarding. And through primary school, it was just like, man, I've got to be a skater. I've got to do this thing. Like, I've got to dress the part, and I've got to have the right deck, and I've got to like hang out at the skate park and know the lingo and be able to fit in there. And I remember one day we had this PE teacher in primary school, and he gave us on the last day of term this awesome kind of green light to all the boys in my class: bring your skateboard to school on Friday, last day, and you guys can skate around the school for PE. And we were just like, what? Like, this is the best day ever. And so I remember like waking up that morning, and this is like, I'm telling you, last night I was kind of making myself vulnerable to you. I'm doing it again here. I'm standing in my room thinking, like, looking at my wardrobe, like, what's the coolest skate clothes that I can bust out today? Like, everyone's going to have their kit. Everyone's going to be wearing their cool skate gear, like their DCs and their baggy shirts and their baggy jeans and their hat backwards. How can I really fit in and be like the man and look the coolest? And I remember it was like raining, and my dad's going, no, you're not taking it. It's raining. He's not going to. And I'm going, please, like, you can't break this. Like, this is the dream. You can't take this away from me. And I remember so often, like, Mum and Dad say, all right, we're going to take you to the skate park. And so much of it was about the image I was putting across. So much of it was about like, what do I look like? Do I look cool? Do I look like, a skater boy here? Do I look like the man out there? Am I kind of holding up the image? Am I imitating what a good skater should look like? And I used to buy magazines. I remember my brother said to me once, because he's like a saver and I'm a spender, and he was looking at my magazine pile and he's like, if you had like not bought any of them, you would have thousands of dollars. And the whole like thing with the magazines, just flicking through them and going, what's the look? Like, that's where you get the image. That's where you learn, or that's where I was learning. Like, what do I want to imitate here? And it was the same for me with basketball. I shared a little bit about that with you, and there's a bit more of that to come tomorrow night, because it's a huge part of my journey of trying to fill myself up on something that was leaving me empty. But my cousins were the same. I went and watched my cousin when I was in primary school, a little bit before the romance last night of year 2, when I was in kindy. My cousin Phil was in year 6, and like, when you're a little kid, it's like, oh, he's the man, he's in year 6. So I took all my buddies over to the basketball court, and Phil was like running around out there on the court, and he did a layup in front of everyone, and I'm going, all my kindy friends like, that's my cousin, and they're just like, he's the man, he scored, like, and I can even identify from that moment going, I want to be that guy. I've got to be that guy one day. I find it so funny now as a teacher, and I go and look at the year 6s, and I'm thinking, man, I was like idolizing a kid that big when I was in kindy, thinking that's the dream. That's what you got to be. And that basketball thing, it consumed me for a long time. My grandma gave my brother and I this video one Christmas called Michael Jordan's Airtime. Now, I need some honesty from you guys. Can any of you sit down and there's a particular movie you can watch and you can just like speak along with it? You know the words, you know the lines. Have we got any hands? Yeah? All right, good. There's some honest people in here, I'm glad. One of my mates could do it to Shrek. He knew every line of Shrek. And you'd sit there and he's like, this is going to be great. Tonight we're making waffles. And he just sit in there going, dude, okay, we get it. Well, I could do that to this Michael Jordan video. I could sit there and he's like, it starts out with like this real like awesome music building up, and he's like sitting in a chair and they got like the theme music, and then he's like, my name's Michael Jordan. I'm 6'6". I play for the Chicago Bulls. I went to North Carolina. And it's like, he's got this spiel, and I'd just sit there and just like, I was mesmerized. I was watching this, just soaking it up. And I wanted to idolize everything that I saw there. Everything from him being an awesome basketball player to him getting really, really angry when he lost. And you can probably see how that became a problem, trying to imitate that. This is probably the most embarrassing imitation I'll share with you. I'm just giving you a quick overview here. I got really into running at one point. Now, you go to the school cross country or athletics, and then you go to the district and then the regional. And as you start to move up the ranks, people start to look way more serious. Like, you go to your school one and everyone's just there in their PE uniform, and then you rock up to like the regional or the state trials, and like guys have got these mad shoes. Like, you just go, I didn't even know they make shoes like that. They're so shiny. And not only are their shoes shiny, but their legs are shiny because they shave them. And then I rocked up to the first one or two, thinking, I don't need to do that. That's not happening. But I caved, I'll be honest. And I found myself in the shower, and I'm shaving, and I cut myself. I shaved right at the front of my shin and took all this skin off. It's bleeding. And Mum said, why are you in the shower so long? I was like, they're going, how do I get it to stop? And then I rocked up to that carnival, and I'm standing in the lineup for the start of the 1500, looking along, just going, I got this. I'm one of the boys now. Well, a bit less of a man now, but I fit in. Imitating. Trying to look the part. Trying to fit the package. Trying to represent what would get me some status. Get me some popularity. Get me this false sense of success. Imitation. It's something, I want to be completely honest with you. I'm standing here, I'm talking to you about it. I have the humility and the honesty to tell you that in my life, the only reason I can speak to you about this is because I've hit so many dead ends trying to imitate. And I want you guys to understand that, and so that we can relate, because I am in no way, shape or form standing here as someone who's perfect and going, I've imitated Jesus my whole life, been a God-loving Adventist from birth and, 5th generation, because that is not the story. And that's what I want to share a bit of with you guys this morning. So my brother and I, we got sent to Avondale School. You guys probably all heard of Avondale, the Kurrambong. It's like the mecca of Adventism. I didn't even know that. Our grandma lived there, and it was like the boring place we went to see grandma. And Mum and Dad wanted to send us to Avondale because they'd heard that there was like a real good education on offer there. And my mum had some real big concerns about Adventism, though. So we went to see my granddad. He's a wise, legend of a guy. And he was a religious man. And Mum was like, well, before we can commit to this Adventist school, we need to get this cleared with Granddad. He's from the Uniting Church, but he's wise, and he'll know whether Adventism is a cult or not, because that was the word that was getting thrown around. So we go and see Granddad, and Mum's got 2 questions for him. Firstly, why do they have this vegetarian deal going on? And Granddad's like, well, it's a lifestyle choice. It's not a belief. They think it's more healthy, and they're right. And then he goes to my mum. This is funny. He's like, why you got a problem with this? You're a vegetarian. And my mum was a veggie. And she's like, all right, yep, fair enough. Cleared that up. Second question, a little bit more complicated. Why do they go to church on Saturday when everyone else goes on Sunday? And my granddad goes, oh, they're right. There was a couple of thousand years ago, this guy called Constantine. He was mixing pagan beliefs and Christians to, keep the masses happy. And, the Sabbath day kind of fell out then, and it got flicked to Sunday, and now it's just a cultural thing. And but yeah, Saturday is the Sabbath. And Mum's there just going, oh, all right, cool. So we got the green light. We ended up at Avondale. Now, my mum, I remember distinct words saying this: we're sending you there for a good education, but not to become an Adventist. So she still had some reservations, obviously. And my mum and dad both had some hang-ups about religion in general from their upbringing. They got, I guess, bored of church, and they just didn't see it as relevant, and their life got too busy, and they started chasing and imitating stuff like money and houses and living the dream and owning your car and having a business and all that. And that was where they were at. And so sending their kids to that school, to Avondale, was not about religion or discovering Jesus, but it was about an education, ticking that box in the perfect family, the Australian dream, that picture. Now, the plan of going to that school for an education and not to become an Adventist was going really well for me for quite a while. My brother, he met an awesome bunch of guys in his year, and he kind of became an Adventist really early on, I guess, by his association through an awesome community. But my year group, we were kind of a bit different. We weren't really that interested in the church thing, my mates and I. And when we used to stand in chapel, those guys who were just like, when's this end? Yep, sweet. Oh, they're talking about Stormco again. There's some guys dressed up in clowns. Why would you want to spend your holidays like that? And there was not a whole lot of enthusiasm on my behalf about this Jesus thing. Until there was a pretty large turning point in my life. I got my first girlfriend, and she was an Adventist. And she was also really, really into going on these Stormco trips. And I was in year 12. Now, I was kind of like, oh yeah, I can go on a Stormco if I have to. And she's like, yeah, well, I want you to come. And so it became a bit of a non-negotiable. So I ended up going on this Stormco trip to Cobar. And Cobar's dead centre of New South Wales. It's a gold mining town. And I went out there kind of just pretty much just as the boyfriend who got dragged along. I was still kind of not sold out on this going and serving in a country town for the week idea, but I kind of went with an open mind. And that week changed my life. I met Jesus that week, and I want to share a little bit about what happened out there. I was, just doing the thing with the kids club and, clowning and playing games. And then we'd go to this youth centre in the afternoon. There was a skate park there. So my whole skateboard image was like, oh yeah, I can do this. I can fit in here. I know how to play this game and hang out here. And the thing about Cobar, it's a crazy town. It's a gold mining town. But mining towns, doesn't matter how much money they make, the kids just don't have parents or much stuff showing an interest in them. So there's this awesome skate park, and there's all these kids, but there's no adults because they're all down at the pub. There's 4 pubs in a town a little bit bigger than Elmore. And these kids are just hanging out for someone to show an interest in them. And then I was seeing all these kids, they're on their scooters and their bikes and stuff, and I had my skateboard there, and this kid comes up to me called Matt. And he's on his bike, and he kind of goes, you got a skateboard there. Is there any chance that you could teach me to skate? And I'm like, yeah, mate, that's what we're here for. That'd be awesome. So we get him on the board, and he's tic-tacking around, and he's getting this look on his face like this is the best thing ever. And then I see him eyeing off the quarter pipe. It's like a 5-foot ramp, and he's going, I want to drop in on that. I want to be like the guy who can do that in front of everyone. There's like 100 or so kids here, and I want to be able to, show people what's what. And I'm looking at him on this board thinking, you don't got this. And I was like, let's just tic-tac for a bit longer. And so we're getting around, and then he gets to the point where he's like, I'm getting bored of this part. I want to move up to the ramps. So we go over to like this little ramp, and he's there, and it's like just a little fun box thing. And I'm like, let's practice dropping in on this. And he goes to drop in, and he axes himself, and it lands on his backside, but you can see him holding in the tears. He stands up, do it again. He's real determined. And I'm like, this guy, he's determined. He really wants this, and he got it. And then he's like, okay, I'm ready for the big ramp now. And this is all happening over a space of like 2 hours. And so he gets to the point where he's up on this 5-foot quarter on my board, and I'm like saying prayers for the end of my skateboard's life. And and he's standing there, and that if you've ever been in a skate park and the kids like get the idea that someone doesn't really know what they're doing, and they're about to get axed, the crowd gathers. And so Matt's standing there with the shakes, just with his foot out, hovering, doing these ones, and and he doesn't do it because there's like 50 kids around the ramp starting to clap, 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 clap. And they're all just like, crash, crash, crash. And they're wanting to see some carnage. And I'm kind of thinking, I need to diffuse this situation. Jump down, man, we'll practice a bit more. So he hops down, and he shakes off the nerves a little bit and goes, yeah. Tic-tacs around, and then there's no crowd. The kids kind of dispersed again. He's like, all right, let's get up there. Let's do it quick before the crowd comes. So he jumps up, goes for it, just stomps it, goes down with this massive death wobble, and then just rides it out and looks back at me just like, woo! And I'm just like going, yeah, thank you, Jesus. Right. And it was awesome. It was a cool moment of just seeing this kid achieve something. But the conversation that came after it is what changed my life. We went for a walk inside after that. He was kind of like, the adrenaline rush for the day. He was done. And we went into the canteen, and we're standing there just chatting, talking about his life and why I'm there. Because he's kind of going, why do you Stormco guys even come out here? Like, what are you doing? And then he goes up to the canteen to buy some food, and he's like, do you want anything? I'm like, no, I'm good. And he's like, no, seriously. And he just like pulls like $50 out of his pocket. And he's like, I can get you anything. And this kid was 10. And I'm like, dude, where'd you get that $50 from? And he goes, Mum and Dad works in the mines, and it's school holidays, so Mum just gives us $50 every day and tells us to get out of the house. And I'm standing there just like, what? And he's like, yeah, so I can get you anything. Like, you taught me to skate, I'll buy you something. I'll get you a chocolate, you want a Gatorade, anything. And he's just there going like, I got to pay you for what you just did. And this is the moment in my life, I just remember it clicking and just having this chat with this kid, and I was struggling to, like, I can sometimes be a bit emotional. You guys seen that movie, Click, with Adam Sandler? I cried in that. All right, so that gives you an indication of my emotion level. And so I'm standing there talking to this kid. I'm trying to explain to him that he doesn't need to pay me for what I've done. He doesn't need to pay me for my time. He doesn't need to pay me for having taught him to do something on a skateboard. He doesn't need to pay me for conversation or connection. Because that's why we're there. That's what Stormco is about. And it clicked for me because I'm on this trip and I'm there because of this girl. And it hasn't even clicked for me for the first 3 days that's why I'm there. Because I'm just tied up in Chris world trying to imitate, And at that point in time, the journey I was on was be the cool boyfriend, say the right stuff, look attractive, do your hair right, wear the right clothes, because you're trying to get this girl. And I'm in that zone, and I'm having this conversation with Matt, and it's just hitting me like, man, this is why I'm here. And it's not just why I'm here this week. It's not just why I'm on a Stormco trip. It's why I'm alive. And it hit me at that point in time that I've placed value on so much junk in my life, and there's really only 2 valuable things in this world. And that's your time, because the way you spend your time, you can't get that back. You spend $1, you can go and get another $1. You can work for it. You spend a minute, you can't get that minute back. It's gone. The 2 hours, 3 hours I spent with that kid, that's time invested in him. You can't get that back. That's a valuable investment. The way you spend your time, we talked about what we love and how we get to know it well. Well, you got to spend a lot of time on something to get to know it well. And when you spend that time, you're indicating that it's valuable. And that's why you get a reputation for imitating that thing. And it hit me, man, I've been imitating so much stuff that is meaningless. I've been pouring my time, the most valuable thing, or the second most valuable thing there is in this world, into stuff that means nothing. And for the first time, I just invested 3 hours of my time in something that's actually meaningful, and I'm struggling to hold it together here. And the second most valuable lesson and the most valuable thing in this world that I learned from that is love. It didn't matter how many $50 notes that kid's mum handed to him. And you know, some of us think, hey, that's all right. If mum gave me $50 every day, I'd be a happy guy. I could go buy whatever I want, that Xbox, that new iPhone I just saved for 4 days, and I could buy anything, you know. And this kid, you know, it doesn't mean anything to him. He's pulling yellowbacks, bluebacks out of his pocket every day. He's 10. And he doesn't care because they can't show him love. They can't invest in him. Those things can't teach him about life. That material stuff, that junk, it's bits of plastic. You know, if mum told him, hey, stay at home today and let's hang out, that'd be worth like $1,000. If dad didn't go to work that day in the mine and then go to the pub straight after that, man, that'd be like $1 million. That'd be like $1 million gift. Because my mum and dad, they're investing some time in me. They're showing me that they love me. Whoa. Hold your money. Man, that lesson hit me that day, that moment. I walked away from that conversation with Matt. And you know the crazy thing? Like, I fully believe God was using Matt that day, this kid who didn't even know Jesus, to reach me. Because I went back to Cobar for 6 years after that trip. It had me hooked. I went all through uni. And I saw Matt like 3 years later. He wasn't there the next 2 years. I just didn't see him. I think he must have been out of town or whatever. And I saw him 3 years later. He'd grown up, gotten taller, and he's riding his bike. And I just saw him and I was like, hey man, I went up to him. He remembered my name, but he didn't remember anything about that interaction we'd had. And he was just telling me, you know, what he was doing. You know, he's 3 years older. He's 13 now. He's in high school. We had a great conversation. But the impact that he'd had on that day that he walked into my life, he had no recollection. He's just a young kid. And he was just, you know, doing his thing, showing someone that he needed some attention. But that's what kids do. So he didn't know that. And for me, man, it turned my life upside down. I got home from that Stormco trip, and my mum and dad, I remember them distinctly saying, there's something about you that's changed, like you're different. And we can't put our finger on what it is. And I couldn't put my finger on it either. I didn't know what it was, because for me it was like, I just realised I need to be less selfish. But when I look back on it now, that was the day that Jesus walked into my life and said, hey Chris, I don't want you imitating this junk anymore. I want you to chase after me, because this is what's most important. This is where you'll find value. You're not going to come up empty. We talked about the woman at the well last night. Living water. And Matt, in his own way, as a little 10-year-old innocent kid, he showed me the wellspring of living water. He showed me through his need and my stumbling, mumbling, bumbling teenage ability to meet that need. He showed me what living water and life of that eternal spring is like. Now, that Stormco trip had a theme. Leighton Heiss, I don't know if you guys know him, he's a pastor in Adelaide. He was my chaplain. And the theme was John 10:10. And if you got a Bible, I'd like you to turn to that. I want to read it just for a moment. There's a few verses before it I'll read. Jesus said to them again, truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I'm the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. But I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. I'm the good shepherd, and the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. And I kind of, I heard them talking about that text over the week at Stormco, and I was like, yeah, whatever, another Bible text. And I look back on that and I go, man, just that first bit, all who came before me are thieves and robbers. All that junk I was imitating before I met Jesus, there was thieves and robbers stealing my time, stealing my love. God gave us the ability to love, and we spend it on cheap stuff. We spend it on junk. The thieves and robbers of this world, the thieves and robbers. What's the thief and robber in your life that's taking your time, that's taking your love, and it's never going to give it back? Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's an object. Maybe it's an achievement you're chasing. Maybe it's status. Maybe it's an image you're after, like we're talking about in the drama. What is that thief, that robber that the devil's put in your life to take your time, to take that gift of love God gave you, and you're investing it in those dead ends? As for me, I realised when I met Matt that I'd been investing it in some dead ends. And I finally understood that promise of the abundant life. There's a good shepherd. His name's Jesus. And he's come to promise us an abundant life. An abundant life is a full life. And I was chasing this lie that abundant life looked like being a cool skateboarder who could play basketball, run really fast with his legs shaved, and have a girlfriend. And I realised that if I was chasing that, I was coming up empty. Abundant life is so much deeper and so much more than those things, that shallow list of just a checklist that we go, yeah, if I've got this, this and this sorted, then everything's going to be just fine. And it hit me on that trip that wasn't the case. Monday night I said this, and I want to repeat it. There's nothing I've loved in my life that's given me freedom and life like knowing Jesus, that good shepherd. There's nothing that I have known in my life that I've loved in this world that's given me life like knowing Jesus. There's nothing I've imitated that's given me life like knowing Jesus. That wasn't the end of my story. I came back to school and home, and there was a bit of a dilemma. What do my friends think? I shared with you that, my mates, and I was talking to Michael, your activities guy, last night, and he was saying to me, like he shared with you guys, like, who would have thought, like he didn't think when we were at school that he would ever see like a guy like me standing here, unchurched kid who's not interested in church, chapel, God at all, who hangs out with these bunch of boys who are loose, like they're just interested in surfing and going out and getting on the beers at parties and doing that and going down that path of life. Who would have thought that God would bring me here? And that challenge when I came home from this trip was kind of the next step on the journey for me. It's like, I've had this experience. My life's been changed. My heart's been changed. But the peer pressure comes in. Like, how do I share that with this bunch of guys who I've built myself up. I've imitated all this junk to fit in with these guys. And my family, those words echoing in my head. My mum says, we sent you to that school to get a good education, not become an Adventist. And I'm coming home going, hey, I'm a little different now, and it might have a bit to do with that Adventism thing, Mum. I hate to break it to you. How does that look? I want to share with you that journey. Luke 22:54-62, if you've got a Bible, turn to that. Story about Peter. Now I was in Peter's seat at that time of like, do I deny this? Do I come back and just go, nah, that was a cool week, but doesn't affect where I go from here. Doesn't affect the walk I go on from here. It says this, then they seized him, Jesus they're talking about, and they led him away, bringing him into the high priest's house, and Peter was following at a distance. Don't forget that, we'll come back to that. Peter was following at a distance. And when they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat down amongst them. And then a servant girl, seeing him as he sat down in the light and looking closely at him, said, this man was also with him. But he denied it, as Jesus had predicted, saying, woman, I don't know him. And a little later, someone else saw him and said, you are also one of those disciples. And Peter said, man, I am not. And after an interval about an hour, still another insisted, saying, certainly this man was with him, for he too is a Galilean. But Peter said, man, I do not know what you're talking about. And immediately while he was speaking, the rooster crowed. And you guys, you know the implication of that. I was sitting in this position at that time. Do I come back from this life-changing experience and deny? No, didn't happen. I'm the same old guy. I'm still imitating the same junk. Even though I know how empty that is, how cheap that is, how hollow that is. Well, I got to be honest with you, I didn't have a choice. A chaplain who ran that trip late, and he came to me and he said, Chris, I want you to share your testimony of what happened to you on Stormco in chapel in front of the whole school. Now, this was a huge problem. You guys might not understand why, because I'm standing here right now, but when I was at school, I hated public speaking. We got anyone in here who just hates it, like you are petrified of public speaking. All right, I want to unpack for you a little bit of my fear of public speaking. I was in year 4, and I went to a really small school in primary school, and I got put on the debating team. And on the debating team, I was the 4th speaker. So I'm sitting at the end, or the 3rd speaker, the last speaker, and I'm sitting at the end of the table, and the argument's moving along, coming towards me. And as it moves speaker to speaker, my body is just shaking and my eyes start watering so much I can barely see the arguments I'm supposed to be writing down. And by the time I got up, Mum had made me palm cards because I said to her, Mum, I'm so nervous. If you give me paper, it's going to be like a wobble board. So give me palm cards. So Mum put all this effort in, put little plastic eyelets on the corners and the holes and then pushed like a key ring through it. So I had I could look all pro and flip my palm cards as I presented my convincing argument. And it didn't turn out like that at all. What it looked like is this little kid who's shaking and he's got like a tambourine because he's got a little bit of metal there. And his eyes are watering so much that it looks like he's actually crying, not arguing. And I'm like kind of going, I really should clarify that these aren't tears, it's just nerves. And I'm just like a total mess. And I didn't get through the debate. I couldn't speak. I was that nervous. And I think I kind of just came to an awkward, bumbling end. And I remember like this distinct moment of looking up into the crowd because you're supposed to make eye contact. And I realised I'd been glued to the palm cards. And I look up and there's this mum just looking at me like, oh, the poor guy. Just this sympathy and pity on her face. And I thought, you know what? That's just a primary school thing. I'll grow out of it, but I'll never public speak again if I can get away from it. Year 7, we rocked up at Avondale, and the English class, the first task was a get to know you speech. And I've written with Mum, Mum used to type everything for us, and so I would like write my little like half page and think, yeah, that's a good length. And then I'd dictate it to Mum and she'd type it and just pad it out into this 1,000-word essay, trying to get me an A or something. And so I'd pick up this bit of paper on speech day, and I'm like, man, how am I going to get through this? And she didn't do the palm card thing this time, so I've got my wobble board going. And I get up the front, and I'm like, oh, I don't know anyone in here, so it doesn't matter what they think of me. I'm the new kid. And then I'm like, hang on, no, that's even worse, because this forms what they think of me. This is terrible. And so again, year 7, eyes watering, body shaking, just nervous wreck. Barely got through the thing. Could not speak to save my life. Somehow I got through high school without having to do a public speech, like any kind of speaking, again until year 10. And I'm like, year 10, come on, I know these guys now. I'm confident. You know, I've imitated a lot of stuff that makes me feel really cool. I got this. You know, I'm that skater guy, that basketball kid. You know, I'm the captain of the basketball team. I'm fine. Everyone thinks I'm cool. I get up to public speak, this Shakespeare speech. Man, that in itself is terrible, isn't it? And I'm just a shaking, nervous wreck. Year 10, year 11, it happens again. So Leighton comes to me and says, share your story in chapel, in front of everyone. And I just said, no. Deny. And Peter, nah, I don't know that guy. Yeah, I met Jesus on Stormcap. I don't want to tell anyone about that. He comes back to me. I'm going to let you think about it. I'm going to pray for you. He comes back a week later. Chris, we're doing the Stormco Chapel next week. Can you get up and just like 5 minutes, just tell your story? No notes, no wobble boards, no tambourines, maybe some tears. Just all you got to do is speak your story. And what can anyone judge? It's a story. You're not getting marked on it. And I'm like, nah. He comes to me 2 days before. Can you do it? Man, like you've got such a powerful story here. And I just feel like God wants you to share it. And I said, all right, Leighton, like, man, on that run sheet, I want to see like a 2-minute slot so I can just get up, get down. And he's like, yep, that's cool. And I'm sitting at the front over here where Josh is at chapel in Avondale School's building. And I can see this run sheet and my name's on a run sheet for the first time ever. And I am just shaking. Heart beats up, palms are sweaty. I got no paper or anything though, so I got nothing to hold to even distract me. And I'm just like frazzled thinking, what have I got myself into here? And I walk up the front and stand on that stage with a microphone in my hand, and I turn and I look at this bunch of people before me who I just feared judgment from. I'm sharing a story about getting to know Jesus. There's a lot of people in here who might not think that's cool. This isn't really imitating that image that you've been building for yourself, Chris. What are you doing here? And I start speaking and there's just calm comes over me. And there's no shakes and there's no tears and there's no nerves and there's no heart rate. And it's just me just telling a story about how I met Jesus through a little kid with $50 and a lot of time on his hands and no one to love him. Whew, man, I got off from telling that story and sat down and just went, what the heck just happened? You are not a public speaker. And Leighton and teachers are coming to me going, Chris, that was like the most like confident we've ever seen you at the front. We never thought that you could talk like that. And they didn't know the story, so they're going, what is that? And I'm just going, for the first time, in my life going, I guess it's Jesus. I guess it's him. I guess he changed me, because I know I can't do that. I know I can't be here right now in front of you. I'm a school teacher every day of my life. You told me that in year 11, I would have said, that's the worst nightmare. I'll never do that. Stand up in front of people and speak every day of my life? Are you kidding me? I'll do any other job. And I still would if it was just Chris talking, this nervous, shaking, eye-watering little wreck. I still would say that. But I met Jesus. Now, the cool thing about testimony is you get inspired by it. The dangerous thing about testimony is that sometimes you think, oh, that didn't happen to me. And I remember hearing some testimonies along my journey of guys who had gone to low places, jail, drugs, crime, and go, man, like, these dudes have gone so far and they've come back so far to know Jesus. I got nothing on that. And some of you might be sitting here today thinking that as you hear my story. I've talked to kids at school who go, I just grew up an Adventist and I don't have a testimony. You do have a testimony. Every single one of you sitting here has a story. You're sitting here today, drawing nearer to Jesus, and something brought you here. There was a path, a journey you walked, and Jesus has set that path before you. And I don't want you to discredit that. I don't want you to underrate that. I don't want you to take away from the value of that story that he's given you. And I've been saying to you guys each night, I want to get to know you. Come and speak to me, because there's power in our story. There's power in the story of what Jesus has done in our lives. There's a cool bit of scripture in John 3:11. Someone's questioning Jesus on how he has the authority to teach, and he says this in John 3:11. A simple statement. Truly, truly, I say to you, we speak of what we know and we bear witness to what we have seen. And I guess that's all I'm doing here for you guys this morning. I'm speaking of what I know and I'm bearing witness to what I've seen in my life, that Jesus is moving and he wants to know us. He wants to know us well because he loves us. And each of us have a story and he knows that story well. And all he asks, all he says, Colossians 3:17, Paul writes, whatever you do in word or deed, do it to lift up his name. Now, that hit me. I've been imitating junk in my life. I'm the biggest imitator of the empty, the hollow, the dead end, the worthless. I imitate it. I've walked that path. Maybe not all of them, but plenty of them, and come up empty. And when I met Jesus that day, I understood what that meant. In word, in what I say, in what I do, what I invest my time and my love in. Do it for Jesus, because that will fill you. That's that wellspring. That's that living water. You're not going to run dry when you're proclaiming his name. This week, today, this morning, we claim the promise Jesus sets before us, that as followers of him, we want to imitate that love that he set before us. There's a generation of young people imitating love. What a powerful thing that would be. God, I want to thank you for the story. Each time I have the opportunity to share what you've done in my life, God, it hits me again how miraculous it is. Sometimes we go, I haven't seen miracles. And Lord, you remind me that I have seen miracles. And Lord, I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank you for the miracles you've worked in each life sitting and standing before me this morning. There's a testimony and there's a sermon in each person's life and written on their heart. And sometimes the devil gets us down and we don't think that we've got that. He tries to take that away from us because he knows that that's just put in a massive divide, a massive disconnect between you and us when we think we've got no story with you. But Lord, every person here has a story with you. You're walking with them. You're guiding them. You're setting a path before them. And Lord, I pray that we recognize that path, that we look back and we appreciate the beauty that you've painted throughout our lives. And we look forward with that knowledge, with a desire to imitate the love that you left us with, Lord, and that you continue to weave through our lives. Be with us today as we rest, the Sabbath, the Easter weekend, and we reflect on you and the sacrifice you made. You gave your time And you gave the ultimate sacrifice of love, the two most valuable things we have to give. You set that model in place. And Lord, I pray that we go forth and we do the same. Amen.